still eat oatmeal. Oh my God.
I haven't changed. I haven't changed. Okay, we gotta tell the oatmeal story. Do you want to tell the oatmeal story?
Oh my gosh. Yes.
You're listening to the Heart Picker Podcast. My name is Lara, and this is episode 9.
Okay. If I remember correctly, we were at UBC taking the media studies program, and we're having I'm sitting there being like, what the heck did I enroll into? Like this program, because as an international student coming from the US over there, you're paying, I think for UBC, it was for international studies, it was about 30,000 per year.
Yeah, it's
And
insane.
I'm working, I took out loans, I took funds, and I'm thinking what did I just pay into? Media studies, great. Is this a degree I want to pay into?
This is Estephania Solis, the only close friend I made during my years in university. I know. How sad is that?
And that was in the back of my head, and I'm looking over, and I'm just like, oh,
Looking at the
also
people around you, all the young
yeah.
kids, all the 19-year-olds.
Yes, and as a 24 or 25-year-old at the time, I'm like, I'm back in school. Okay. And it's like that weird divide between working life and then going back and studying, and then seeing people who are just in it that don't know anything else, and they're just there to study, and you're like, I at your age, I was partying and doing other stuff, all these thoughts. And then I was like, all right, no, let's hold that down. And I look over, and I remember seeing you, and I don't know how you sat on the chair, it just
Okay, do you want me to
always was
show you?
your legs up, and yeah, dude,
You'll do
exactly
it.
like that. Exactly like that.
I
Like your
can't
legs
sit
up, and you're just, and I think you were wearing your hipster glasses with your beanie. I say beanie, but toque, Canadian style.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I think she's Latin, but I'm not gonna assume. Whatever. And then I think at some point you asked something, and I was like, yes. I hear the accent. Okay, I'm not alone. There's nobody else that I can speak Spanish to. Hmm. Let's see. And then as soon as we started to speak, um, I think it was our age, and then also how we also got to Vancouver, because I know our story's a bit similar in that regards. And it was just like, oh, click. Okay, I've made a friend. There's a connection. Whew, I can, I can at least grab onto something while I'm here in this foreign university. And of course, how can I forget, every day in class, you would just so diligently pull out your little glass Tupperware of oatmeal and bananas, almond milk. And I'm just looking at you, I'm like, oh.
Every single class. We had a lot in common, a lot more than I had with the rest of the students. We were the only older students, we both spoke Spanish, and we came from warm climate cities, and we both moved to the city for the same reason. We fell in love. We bonded over the fact that both of us, first of all, we were both older than the rest. Yeah, I couldn't relate. We both couldn't relate to any of our classmates. That was a shock. That really was hard for me going to school, and I think for
Yeah.
you too. And then you left me, so I was on my own, but that's a different story. And then we bonded over the fact that we both had moved to Vancouver, not with the main purpose of living with someone, but we both moved in with a loved one.
Yes.
In Vancouver. And it was like, when you told me that story, I was like, me too. And I also moved here from a different city. You moved from a different country. It was a little more intense, but still.
Well, I mean, US, Canada, but I get it. Yeah.
I wanted to have her on the podcast because I thought her story was very inspiring, and I've learned so much from her throughout the years. We held each other's hands through our relationships, through the joys, through school, and through our breakups too. Estefania and I hadn't talked since maybe 2 years or something. But she'll always be that friend who, no matter how long it's been, I don't think our friendship will ever change. I hope she agrees with us if she listens to it. This is her story, her background, her childhood, how she zigzagged her way through different careers, until she finally chose the one that was right for her. We talk a bit about her relationship experience and where she's at now. Estefania is one of the most resilient and one of the bravest girls I know. I admire her for being so independent and for never giving up on her dreams. I hope you enjoy.
So I was born in El Paso, Texas. If anybody has been there or has passed through there, because mostly people have passed through there, it is a border town or border city. It's next to the Juarez Chihuahua border, and it's its own little microcosm. I think the very unique and special part of what makes El Paso Juarez, like even though they are two separate cities, within themselves, they're kind of like their own little world where we can have those conversations in Spanglish, or you're easily speaking in English, and then switching up to Español y puedes empezar a describir algo más, o sea, algo completamente diferente si no lo puedes decir en inglés, and then you go back to English because it's a little bit easier, or there's certain vocabulary that you can't necessarily use in Spanish. That fluidity to be able to move between both cultures, that it's its own special place. I can't explain it. Like there's a level of warmth that exists over there that I still haven't been able to explain or make it tangible, because people come with, it's like a level of warmth, openness, and sincerity. If you meet somebody and you ask for help, they will genuinely take time out of their day or their schedule or routine, whatever it was, to help you, to be there. I think because I grew up with that in a weird sense, like I consider myself loving big cities. I love, for the most part, like I tend to love fast lives, big cities, as you know, like organized. Okay, let's do this. Like keep going, keep going. But at the end of the day, like in my heart, like I know that I'm a small town girl. If that makes sense. And so it's kind of like a very weird divide. It's like somehow like life has adjusted me into being able to adapt into a big city life, but at the same time I still keep those core values within me, which I would have never realized that if I had not moved. Because right, like once you move and you lose something and you miss it, that's when you start realizing like, oh, this was actually important. This actually formed a lot of my sense of self.
Estefania grew up in a very warm environment, but there was one event in her childhood that would probably impact her for the rest of her life.
It's like a soap opera. One day it'll become a book or something. But essentially, I met my sister around age 4 or 5, like somewhere around there, and then we didn't know we had a brother until like a year or two later. So three children, and we're all 10 months apart. And it was like the most interesting thing, because when you're young, it's like, for me, it was like the more the merrier. Where they're like, "You have a brother. Oh, amazing, cool! Like now I get to share like, my life, or like I have like a play buddy." And I was like 5 or 6. So same dad, 3 different moms. You don't make sense of that stuff, right? And I think also, I didn't meet my dad until I was around 4, if I'm correct. I have to double check my mom, like around there. So it was just like one after the other, like all this newness started to come into my life. And I was just like, yeah, sure.
And why didn't you meet him until you were 4?
Just situations between them. I would have to ask my mom further with that, but from what I understand, she did not want him to meet me until, yeah, until I guess I was that age, and an opportunity came where, as she tells it, like we went to Mexico. I got to meet him. I gave him a hug. He cried, and I think because also out of the three of us, and this is something we've discussed, I look more like my dad. So if you were to meet my dad, like he's like blonde, blue eyes, would not, like the stereotypical Mexican image that people usually have, like that's not my dad. Um, but he's like the most Mexican person ever. Like he doesn't even speak English. And I love him for that because he'll say yes to everything. I'm like, Dad, no. So I have to translate sometimes. Um, so I think, I don't know, I mean there's definitely a bond there. And then through that, for me it was more of like, oh, I have siblings and a dad and a family, because when you're so little and so young, you know, um, I I don't know, like I do remember seeing other kids like with their parents and being like, oh, is that my dad? And my mom would be like, nope, come back. Like, oh, is that my dad? Nope, come back. And so like that does mark, like that does affect a child, because that's what you often see in families, right? Like the mom, the dad, and of course like now we're changing that, but it might have affected me, I guess, to the point where I was asking like that. So when I did meet my brother and my sister, it was like, oh, so new, and now I have siblings and family and I can play, because up to that point I was an only child. So a lot of my time was spent like in my world for the most part, and playing with my toys and this and that, but like how cool to share with somebody else. But then of course, like, you get used to being an only child, and then when you're actually asked to share stuff, you're like, no, this is mine. So that was another step of like, oh, now what I considered mine and my personal space is shareable. I don't like that. And I remember that as a child being like, no, this is really hard. The moms were never in the same space. So we had like visitation days, I guess. Like, I think it was like Tuesday, Thursday. And that's where it'd be like, oh, let's go to the movies. And then all three of us would join, and it would be usually with my dad. Like my dad would pick us up and stuff. I would say growing up, I was closer to my brother. And if my sister ever hears this, maybe she will agree, because, she was the oldest and she was daddy's girl. And then all of a sudden, boom, she gets this boy and this other girl, and she's like, what's this? And I remember there was a sense of rivalry and tension.
Were you both competing for your dad's attention?
Not so much. I mean, maybe there is a hierarchy here or something, but because I was the youngest, I was always kind of like in my own world. I didn't care. I was like that child. I was like, yeah, let's do this and that. And I would just go and like bother her, and like bother my brother, and I was like all over the place, like probably picking my nose and like climbing up stuff and whatever. And for her, because she had been the main, you know, attention for a while there, of my dad and her mom, all of a sudden to add like these two people into the mix, now it's like, oh, so who are you? What are you about? Like, it's that rivalry of like, you're taking away now from the attention that I was getting. And so what does this mean? And I could see that coming out in the way that we would play sometimes, or maybe she would like push me away, or like, she would try to make that distance between us. And I don't know, again, if she hears this, I might hear from her. um, but it was because maybe she was also trying to make sense of, what was this? Now I have this younger sister, and I don't have the full attention of my dad like I used to. What does this mean? So like, sibling rivalry starts to come in, right? And so from there, I don't think her and I had a loving relationship, if I could say it in that way.
And your moms never talked?
No,
None of your moms?
no.
And is this a common situation that happens in like Mexican culture where, I mean, it's common here in Venezuela, where all of a sudden, even in adulthood, oh my God, I have a brother or a sister somewhere.
Yeah.
And so is this, have you seen that a lot?
Cue the soap opera.
Latin,
Javier,
yeah,
I have to tell you something.
the double life.
Yeah, the double life. I have a wife. No, I also have a girlfriend. Wait, I have a lover. And you're like, oh, how many, like, where does the line
Do you think
end?
that affected you? Do you think that did that affect you in relationships and in your adulthood? How did that affect you? That kind of that dynamic from your childhood?
Most definitely, of course. I mean, I would lie to say, oh no, I don't believe in that. But imagine like seeing your head that like the somebody who's supposed to take care of you and because as a child, like those are your role models, right? Like you do learn through examples. And so seeing that, like, wow, this is tumultuous. Like, how is this possible? The older I got and the more I started to become aware of these things and be exposed to those dynamics, I was like, wow, this is really unhealthy. And unfortunately, that I think for me, it did create that sense of I need to I need to follow my instincts and because one of two things, like I could see when a father figure is not present in somebody's life, um, it could either be, oh, I'm trying to find like my dad in another relationship, you know, and not my like my dad specifically, but like those qualities of what a dad would be. So like somebody who protects you, takes care of you, in that sense. So I can see that being translated. And for me, it was the total opposite of like I don't want to rely on anyone. I don't want to rely on that. Like I'm not going to put myself vulnerable to somebody who could potentially like that, like all of a sudden find out that they have like 5 wives, who knows where, or end up having other children and creating more, like causing more chaos. Because I think to a certain extent, I mean, we're all human, right? And I always say that like they did the best that they could in the circumstances that were there. I don't have any regrets or remorse over that, and I think for me it has been a yeah, like a lifelong process of understanding that, going through my anger, going through like sadness, and then finally being like, okay, I get it, I understand, they did the best they could. But
Would you say it gave you trust issues?
um to a certain extent, it was like I was measuring not only myself but others to that of like when will be the time that they're going to like I'm just waiting for that time where they're going to mess up and then I can drop them. And that was like my ammo for a long while. Um but in that I think it was because I was also protecting myself from all that chaos. Because when you're that little and you're growing up constantly between I mean, you feel it, right? Even if somebody doesn't tell you, you feel it when two adults fight. And they're like now they're moving you between this and that and now you're because in my upbringing I actually most I lived with a lot of my aunts and my uncles. So my living situation wasn't as stable. I'm not saying it was bad. It was just it wasn't stable. Like when I talk to people who have lived in the same house for like 20 plus years, have had the same room, have never changed it. And they talk to me, and I'm just like, this is amazing. What do you mean? Like, I don't remember, like, to me, that stuff is not permanent. It just, because I had to move so much, I learned not to hold on.
Why did you have to move so much?
Well, because I was with my mom, and then at 11, when I was 11, I moved with my dad, but my dad, I think he tried in his best way that he could, but he knew his life was work. was work, and it was to provide for his family. So his sisters, his mom, his dad. As the fortunately, unfortunately, as the inherent value in like Mexican culture. I don't know how it is in Venezuela, but in Mexican culture, of if you're the oldest and you're a man, you usually provide, like if the dad dies, or if the dad, like if they can't, you become the one that provides for everybody. And I could see that. I could see how the pressure, it was so much for him, but that's all he knew as well. And he still is like that. Like he'll have conversations with you, like, what can I help you with? No, just I don't want that. But it just became ingrained. And because of that, I think when I came into the mix, it was something new for him. Like, oh, like first of all, he's a guy, I am a girl, and like I remember having conversations with him where I'm like, so I have cramps, and he's like, oh, just here, take some money, go, whatever you need, go over there. You should talk to your aunt, because he couldn't relate, and I'm just like, oh, okay.
Was there a reason why your mom, why didn't she stay with you when you were 11?
Well, I mean, she's a single working mom at the time. She couldn't provide probably what my dad could provide. And so that, I think that decision, as heartfelt and hard as it was for me, in order to have a better education and have probably exposure to a family with my cousins, because we're all somehow around the same age. Like we're maybe 2 to 3 years apart at the most. So I know that probably was something in her mind of, okay, I need you, like I would rather you be comfortable and have a good education and all of that. But that meant that I had to live, or that my dad was in charge of me, or like my guardian. But he had never like lived with a child. Like he saw us, Tuesday to Thursday or whatever, or when I went and visited when I was on vacation for a week or two. But that was never, once it becomes every day. So from there, I lived with my aunts, with his sisters. So I moved a lot between them. And literally it was like from one day to the next. I remember having my backpack and like a bag with a change of clothes and be like, all right, I'm here now. In 2 days, I'm going to be over there, over here, over here.
And you were okay with that? You were never like, fuck, I just want one place?
No, actually. I think for me now, it's hard to be in one place. It's really hard.
But at the same time, I think you look for a lot of stability and like,
yes, and I
schedule your life.
And I think that's
which is like, it's what I think of when I think about you. Every time I try to talk to you, it's like, in 2 weeks at this time, and I'm like, whoa, what the fuck? We're just gonna catch up. Like you don't have time Sunday or Saturday? No. So do you think that's why? I think you're pretty Nazi about it. I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna put it out there. Yo siempre lo digo en español. Mierda, Estefanía sí es Nazi con el horario. Oh, it drives me nuts. Oh, it's out of my chest.
I know. And for me, it's like, Laura, don't send me things last minute. I can't.
I know. So yeah, do you think that's why? Because on one hand, you can adapt really easily to different environments. Yeah. But on the other hand, you look for that stability, I think, right? That you didn't have as a child.
I will agree with that. I just flashed back to, well, maybe we'll get into this, like when we were living together.
Yeah, that'll be that's coming. That's coming.
So yeah.
But first, I want to go on your process in Vegas. You went to Vegas and you wanted to become an actress.
Mm-hmm.
So why did you want to become an actress? Like, how did that happen, and why Vegas?
Okay, so I'll answer as best as I can. So the first question, I always loved performing. Always. Like, I mean, there's even somewhere somewhere in like our videos or archives, there's a video of me in one of my birthdays, and I'm like giving this, I'm like 5, and I'm giving this speech with my cake. I'm like, thank you, señores y señoras, gracias por venir. And I'm just like out, like, I was, like I said, I was that child when I was 5, where I just took it upon myself, where if I liked something, I was like, ooh, I want to imitate that. And then I was on a roll. Comedians, public speakers, whatever I saw on my, on TV. And I remember that although like life was a little bit tumultuous growing up, I really enjoyed making people laugh. And it was like I just turned on and I just kept going and going. And I've never lost that. Like, I think even to now, like, I always try to find the humor in things. Performance wise, I mean, I don't know. I'm still gauging that. But since I was young, I was always like in this, like, organizing, even with my family for, because, you know, like over there for Christmas, we celebrate on the 24th. And I was like a week before, or like 2 weeks before, I'd be like, all right, like, I'm gonna be the organizer. What we should like put up a choreography for a dance, because we're going to show that to our family, and who wants to sing. And it was always like I was on with like performance, theater, whatever. So I just knew that that made me come alive, and I felt that spark. So anyway, life gets in the way. I'm studying, like, even in school, I was in arts and whatever. But of course, you know, my dad was like, well, you're never gonna make a living. I was like, great, thanks, Dad. Like, that's, you know, you should pick a stable career. Like, you should be a doctor, or you should be a lawyer, or go into, what was it, business administration. And I was like, okay, sure. And it was just kind of like to a certain extent, I think my family entertained that as like, oh, okay, this is like a cute little hobby or side thing that she's doing, and eventually she'll grow up. But that passion never went away. Flash forward, I'm in Vegas. Amongst many jobs that I had here, I stumbled upon an acting class, and that spark kind of like came back. I like this. I feel good, and I know where this is going. So I want to try this a little bit more. But, you know, working as far as having a day job and then pursuing something that's so, like, the nature of acting is, it's kind of up and down. Like, you can't really, it's not as stable, which I think that's what drew me to it, where I was like, oh yeah, I know this. I know how to go from point A to B and then come back and all of that. So in that, I think it was like 2 years, I slowly started phasing out my day job, which was sales at the time. And then I started getting more into like acting classes and like commercial work, and I had some things here and there. And then eventually, like, my own drive was like, great, I've explored everything that I wanted to explore here. What's next? Because that was like the hunger in me, right? Like, okay, what else can I do? I'm kind of like, I'm good in this territory, but I don't feel growth. And then the idea of LA started to come through. It's like, okay, so the next step, obviously, as I hear, you know, you're in the industry, and you hear that that's the next step. That's where you want to like make it, quote unquote. And I slowly started making some connections and moves to eventually phase into LA. But somehow I wasn't, even within everything that I was doing, it's not sustainable. It's and I don't know now, because I'm not in the industry. I know people who are in it, and I hear similar things, like the echoes, but it's not a sustainable industry in the way that it operates. And the way I was coming to it was because I purely loved the art form. But when you mix the business into it, that's where it got, like, everything went down for me. I remember like working so much, like 3-4 days, and then just crashing. And when I mean crashing, like sleeping, not like nothing. for like 1 or 2 days and then coming back up again and going. And my health was, my gosh, I can't I mean, I have a lot of energy naturally, but my health was not at all where it needed to be. So naturally I have anxiety, that only kicked it up even more because my sleeping schedule was so off balance. Food, sometimes I ate, sometimes I didn't because you're rushing from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next. And then within that, in one of like my gigs that I was like doing in order to pay for my classes, I ended up meeting the person that I moved to Canada with, the loved ones we were talking about. And it was just like, now I have these two decisions, and my head's telling me to go somewhere else, but my heart's telling me to go somewhere else too. And how do I gauge that? And of course, the heart won in this, and then came to Canada, and then eventually I met you within the year.
When I met Estephania, I was going through a lot of hardship in my living situation with my boyfriend at the time. When you choose to live together at such a young age, things can get pretty difficult. Estephania was the only friend who I turned to during my fights, and the one who could relate to everything I was going through and could give me some solid advice because she was going through it too.
I want to talk about that, about what it's like to live with someone at a young age, someone you fell in love with, and someone you made that decision quickly with because it was quick.
Yeah.
And who you hadn't, it's not like you went out for a year living in the same place. Let's not include names. But just like me, we both had a long distance relationship before we decided to move in with them. So it's not like we got to know them on the day-to-day basis.
I mean,
we were in a honeymoon.
Exactly. Yeah. So it was like,
that's what I want to talk about.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, you can do long distance as much as you want, but at the end of the day, you're still putting your best foot forward, right? In both cases. And that's what I found. It was like, oh, but like the heart and these feelings, and I've never felt this before, and there's a good connection, and what does this mean? But my head's telling me like, hey, you were already building a bridge somehow into what you wanted to do, but how are you feeling? And obviously the feeling went there. And yeah, after a long distance, like I remember like so much went into it, because I remember I was talking, and then we're like, do you think we can make this possible? Okay. And then I remember just like, if I wasn't working, then I was making time to speak with him. And then I was like researching how to apply for like these permits, like, what does it mean to immigrate to Canada? All these things. And oh my gosh. And it was a good like 6 months of me just going back and forth. Meanwhile, we're talking, and then I'm trying to like close off what I had here in Vegas and making sense of that. And yeah, I think it just, you follow your heart at that point.
Do you look back and think that was a stupid decision, or do you think
Sometimes I do.
It was a good
The organizer, the critic in me is like, if only you would have known. But how could we, right? We only, like I said, you won't know. You can plan so much, but at the end of the day, you won't know how you're going to act in a certain situation until you're actually put into it. It was all discovery. It was, I think for me, it was freshness and sense of discovery of, okay, now we're here. Now I have the permit. What does that mean? Okay, now I have to, and it was just going from like one milestone to the next, versus saying, okay, I have this goal and I'm going to do this in a very planned way. You can't with those things. And I learned that I had to adapt to that. And then on top of that, moving in with somebody, which we come from a different culture, we come from different backgrounds, different countries as well. What does it mean? Like, one thing is doing long distance or seeing yourself through video, but to actually live with somebody, and like you said, get to know their daily routines, you learn a lot about them, and most importantly, you learn a lot about yourself, what you're willing to put up with and what you're not. And I think that was it was there was times that it was infuriating because yes, I am very I do have specific like boundaries when it comes to how I like my space. Um, but it was also very fun to understand like, oh, now we're here, now we can blend this and we can come together and create something new. And it was going through all those things, and similarly like getting to know not only them but their family, um, being able to, I think one of the biggest gifts that I got from that was being able to witness how another family came in and supported each other, if that makes sense. So, and I don't regret. It was amazing to get to meet a lot of their family members, to get to know them in a different level as well. I met some friends through him, and I don't regret any of that for sure. Like none of that. But yeah, like coming into somebody else's life, because that's what it was at the end of the day. It wasn't like we were coming together at the same level to create a life together. It was I was coming in to somebody else's life and then assessing, oh wait a minute. I'm potentially alone here in that sense. Like first of all, like what I'm used to, like weather-wise, what we were talking about, like weather-wise, your food, like I remember changing my diet. I remember changing like so many things, like both physically because of the weather, I wasn't used to that. And now I'm like trying to make sense of also culturally, like how do people relate here? How do they interact? And I felt like such an alien being there because as much as I tried, nothing was sticking. And I think once that feedback came back, I was like, oh, and that's where I kind of like fell and I was like, oh, I don't feel supported here. Or not that I don't feel supported, but I don't feel like my authentic, genuine self can actually thrive here. And that's hard.
It's like you were trying to, yeah, because you were trying to adapt to a different identity in a
Correct.
different culture, and rather than being
Correct.
yourself within
Because
that.
when I tried, like as we know, if I may share, when you get shushed on the bus because you're speaking too loudly, and then you realize, oh,
Yeah.
okay, that's no longer accepted here. And then slowly, whether I want to, like, whether people want to admit it or not, like, those things do affect because all of a sudden it's like, oh, this is who I am, this is how I'm coming through. Now I can't be accepted. And now, like, the shrinking starts to happen. Oh, now this is no longer accepted. Oh, okay, now this, now that. And it goes down. And I mean, it was very dysregulating, very dysregulating. But it's like what we were talking about. I mean, side note, I don't know if you want to add this into your interview, but when we were back in Vancouver, it was like, yeah, Vancouver is great. It's amazing. There's so much resource and possibility here, yet everybody's freaking unhappy and like the sun doesn't come out. And like being from a place where it's always warm, where it's always like, it's so different.
What Estephania mentioned here is exactly what I was feeling in my years in Vancouver as well. On one hand, I love that city and everything about it. And I was so proud of the life I was living there and the love nest I had built next to my partner. But on the other hand, the culture and overall social environment of the city really started to kill my spirit. Up next, you'll be hearing me and Estefania have our girl talk about our experience with relationships, living together, sex, and overall making shit work when you're young and in love.
What were your lessons from that, like love wise? Do you think love is enough?
If you would have asked me this before, I would have said, yeah, love is enough. Love will, will take everything down and you can always thrive and love is the answer. I think now I can say, yes, love is the answer. Go with that feeling. Go with what your heart is saying.
Not knowing, you know what I mean? Like it's a separate person, let's say. Because if you know the future, you'd be like, no.
No.
But
but even then I would still say I wouldn't regret and say no to what I experienced. What I look back on and I learned is that love that was there was so strong. I mean, it was deep. It was very deep. As you know, like to the point where I was looking to change or to go into a new religion and like mixing a culture, which like at the end of the day, I want to think that cultures don't influence our behaviors, but they do. And at least if having that awareness or that knowledge, how does like my culture where I come from, how does that translate into like the behaviors that I have or that I'm carrying with me? If I would have known that, perhaps I don't know, that love could have been more sustainable. So when I say is like how could it have been more sustainable is we like to see all those movies and okay, at the end of it they're very happy, they end up together and all that. Well, you don't see the rest of that. Because as you mentioned, yeah, it was the honeymoon phase, but love could be the initial like proponent that moves that relationship. But after that comes like, okay, let's compromise, dedication, commitment to that sense of like commitment of do I still believe in us? Do I still believe in this? Because if I do, I am willing to compromise. Because if you're going just off of a feeling, that's great. But at the end of the day, we're living in this reality, in this society. And to be able to bring that union together, there has to be a level of commitment and yeah, like that commitment and that understanding to say, okay, how can we make this sustainable? We still want to be here. Do we? Yes, no. Do you assess that? Once you do it, well, how do we make this work? And I think
and I think you guys made that work for a while, because I would come to class with like bags under my eyes from fighting all night, and I'd be like crying and telling you like, what do I do? And you'd give me really solid advice on things that you would do in your relationship, and like, what do you do when you're upset, and what do you do in a fight?
Right. Yeah, like I said, I think we honestly did try. We tried our best, but at the end of the day, that's what I learned. It's like what external factors, external sources, and people are influencing that, right? Because at the end of the
But
day,
sometimes you don't know, right? Sometimes they just come like you
exactly,
can't prepare.
exactly. But it was learning that of like, even though we both want to be together and there's that connection, it's very intense and very passionate, and there was a lot of love there. Am I like, I stepped away from that, like walking away and thinking, like, how do I fit into your world and how do you fit into mine? Because we can love each other and have the most sincere feeling for each other. But if I don't make sense in your world and you don't make sense in mine, this is never going to be sustainable. And slowly, I think that's what we started to realize. Even though we like, I could clearly feel and see it that we were really trying to make sense of everything. It was like, no, like I somehow still don't fit into your world, and I don't know if I ever will. I don't know. And the same thing for me. It was like, well, I'm doing all these things and I still want so many things for myself. Like, as you know, like for me, my studies, my education, like I still want a career, all these things. And I do want to settle down, but not in the same way as you do. And once you come into that realization, that's what I meant. It's like you can have all that level, that feeling, but that's like putting putting your foot on the gas pedal. So yeah, that's going to take you as far as you want, but that can also lead you to crash. So can you make that sustainable where you're just revving a little bit and you keep going nicely and you can keep that steady. Not saying that you're not going to have ups and downs, but if you're able to maintain that level of commitment and truly like accountability between each other, when you do encounter those ups and downs, that's when you can say, all right, we have training, we have work, we've done it. How do we get from out of here, or how do we bring each other back into into balance or into harmony? And I think that was my lesson of, wow, like I experienced something I don't know a lot of people experience in their life, and that's why I don't regret any of it. But at the same time, it's like, what did I learn for next time? What did I learn from this?
So that's what you learned for next time is a sustainable, could this be sustainable for me?
Exactly.
Yeah. And sustainable in what sense? What does it mean to have, what does that mean in a relationship?
Well,
like what is the thing you have to sustain? Your mental health, your well-being, what is it?
Well, that would come under personal for each other. Like, yes, of course, mental health, well-being, but it's essentially, like I mentioned, looking at your values, looking at what you're willing to compromise and not compromise, those boundaries, and seeing, like, do you truly see this person and say, okay, I'm willing to commit, I'm willing to shift my world. Are you willing to do that? And not saying that it's not going to change, but like in that moment, can we carry each other together? Because maybe there will be moments where I don't know your struggle or I don't know what you're going through, but can I be there for that person without changing anything, and just being there? And same thing, like, can the person be there for me without changing anything and just accepting me as I am in that moment? And then you can get those things going, like it sounds way more boring than than all the things you see in the movies, and that the girl meets guy, guy meets girl, whatever. Oh, there was a look and they liked each other, and now he's like putting his life on the line to go rescue her. Like, amazing for a story.
That's not love.
But that's not sustainable.
Love is a lot more boring than what they have put it for us. And that's why when we get bored with someone, because eventually it'll happen. I'm talking like this because my microphone has fallen.
Okay.
So I don't want to adjust it. Anyway, yeah, when we get bored and when it stops being like exciting, and now it's like work and we have to negotiate and we have to do a lot of talking, communication, right, blah, blah, blah. And the sex drive goes down, like eventually it's not as passionate anymore. Then we're like, oh my God, I'm not in love with it anymore. I'm not in love with this person anymore.
Exactly.
And we're like searching for the next. Or we see someone, we feel that thing again, and we're like, that's it. I'm going to leave this for that person. I think that's something that is a great point. I had never, you said it perfectly. Love is boring. Love is boring.
Yeah.
I never considered that.
Like, yeah, like you mentioned, because you will have that, like, yeah, sex drive goes down. What do you do now? Like, and especially now in our culture, it's like instant gratification, right? We want instant gratification. Oh, this person, this thing, this product, this experience, this whatever is not fulfilling my expectations. Boom, I can just drop it. But what's the more
there's a lot of choice everywhere.
Exactly. And
I open an app, a dating app, and there's like 100 possibilities. How is that not exciting? Exactly.
So that's the question. It's like, well, you can keep riding that wave and it's going to be really nice, but at the end of the day, you're not going to get to the level of depth that you probably would ever get to if you were to cross that, like once you cross that level of excitement and then really go into like the like the juicy hard work of being like, oh wow, and now we're here and this is boring, or hey, my sex drive is not up today, or oh, something's, and then working that out.
I think for you, can we talk about that? How, like, I remember how that was a big thing in your relationship, where you'd be like, I am busy, I am tired, I do not feel like having sex, and my partner is not happy about that.
Yeah. But okay, yes, I will say that there was some pressure there. There was pressure. And you know why? Then I'm going to bring it back to myself, because this is something that women are not taught naturally through education, is what? Knowing yourself, knowing your body. What happens, as we mentioned, you're going to a new country where there's like zero sun for the most part. My my energy was low because of that. My health was declining. I had so much stress and anxiety from trying to survive with a permit that only allows you to work 20 hours a week at the most in a city that's coined as one of the most expensive cities. So there was a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety, but I never clued into that. And I don't think he did as well. So we never had that conversation. So, yes, at the end of the day, trying to juggle, like, I think I had like two jobs, because one, I was kind of on call and maybe they were going to give me hours, maybe not. The other one could only give me hours for like, I think 1 or 2 days a week. On top of that, I was like juggling a full-time program and then trying to live with somebody new and make a life together. Like, crazy, right? And then you would say, well, why would you ever do that, Estephania? Why? Are you kidding me? Like, that, I am like, and even then, like, I am not probably going through as much as like many people who have way like heavier things to hold on their plate, and they still manage somehow. But at the end of the day, yes, when you don't know yourself and you're just on survival mode and overdrive, there is no time, like you said, to have me time. There is no time. So you don't get to know yourself. You don't get to know your body, your health, your physique, what drives you, what you like. So yeah, at the end of the day, when somebody's like, "Hey, you know, are we gonna do this tonight?" And you're like, "No, no, I just battled." Like, to you, it might be very regular weather, but for me, like in my body, it feels like I'm coming back from you know,
I'm not feeling sexy.
from the
I
North
don't
Pole.
have the energy.
Especially
Yeah,
because at UBC, like the temperature drops, I don't know how many how many degrees. So like I feel like I'm coming back from the North Pole. I'm trying to survive. I'm thinking about how I'm gonna make money. I'm thinking about how I'm gonna pass this course. I'm thinking about what we're gonna have for dinner.
exactly.
And now I have to like, it feels like I have to provide a service for you.
Exactly.
So no.
Exactly.
But what happened is I didn't know myself enough to say those things because I wasn't comfortable with that. And I was 24, 25, and unfortunately, yeah, I was very young and inexperienced with those things. And I mean, we were learning as much as we could with the resources that we had. But is sex a big factor? Yes. And then you'll find, like you said, like love is boring. Sometimes you do get to the point where you're like, we're gonna have to compromise on this.
We have sex Fridays, Saturdays, maybe a Thursday. If you have dinner for me by the time I get home,
Like,
and that is so not sexy to plan.
right?
But it kind of like it is what it is. You have to kind of plan and like put work into it,
Right.
unfortunately. And that's the thing. When we're young, we're like self-conscious about that. Oh, that's not very sexy to have this conversation. That other person has to have the maturity and to have that conversation too, because that person may be like, what the fuck? I'm not gonna like, I don't want to have sex anymore. That's it. You turned me off.
Right.
Yeah, it's the whole being young thing. Like living together at a young age, although I will never regret it, is wow, is tough. But I think we both learned a lot of things that if we were to make that decision again now, whoa, I think we have a lot in our toolkit from that experience.
Yeah.
Like we won't be repeating those mistakes again. Like I've been
Well,
here.
never say never,
Um,
but
hope God, I hope not. Jesus. Um,
yeah.
do you think it'll be hard for you to live with someone again, or if you are you open to that, and you don't think you'll have a problem if you know someone and feel, you know what I mean? Like, did you
Yeah.
feel trauma
Oh,
from that experience?
traumatized? I mean, was there trauma? I think there certainly was. I definitely came out of that. It took me a while. It took me like another 2 years probably to fully like be in myself. Um, But again, I think that's because also I was in a country where I didn't feel the support. I couldn't, whereas like my former partner at the time could turn to their family right there and be like, "Hey," right next to them, say, "Hey, I'm going through this, blah, blah, blah." Mine was like, "Hey, oh no, you're in another country. Hey, you're in another 2 countries." And still I did have support from people. I mean, I had support from you, I had some support from other girlfriends at the time who were there to remind me like, "Hey, wake up. Reminder, you're gonna be okay. Reminder, you know, this is not the end of the world." And those things are important, like having a support system.
Outside of your relationship.
Most
That's so
definitely.
important.
That is a big learning lesson. Like as
Yeah.
much as you want
We
to.
both might have done that. Our
Mhm.
support was like mostly that one person, and that is the worst. Let's talk about your career, and like I think you had a very zigzaggy road to, you know, what your career is now. And yeah, let's talk a bit about that. Like from acting to therapy, right?
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about Estefania's career because I think a lot of us freak out when we don't know what we want to do. Or we've switched career paths too much, or we can get scared about switching career paths because we think it's too late or we're too old. One thing I admired about her is how fearless she was about switching careers, exploring different jobs. She never gave any thought to how old she was or whether she was too late or too old. Life isn't a linear road when it comes to your career nowadays, and I thought her experience could be of value for those who feel lost or confused or have no idea what they want to do professionally yet.
I mean, it's interesting. Like as we met each other, I was in media studies thinking like, okay, I like communications, I like the spoken word, I like audio, and I was able to explore all of that in Vancouver. And then through it, I think because of the person I was with at the time, I was exposed to this program. And even though it didn't resonate with them at the time, for me, I was like, oh my goodness, like this is like right on cue of like what I've been wanting my whole life. I've always liked psychology. I've always liked um, that part of me, and art was something that like I would consider the things that I do or like how I live my life. I would consider are creative, but I wouldn't say like, okay, I'm an artist where I set up shop and I do like little crafts and manualidades. I don't know how you say that in English, but like I wouldn't consider myself an artist in that way. But I, like I mentioned, I always liked performance. I liked acting. I liked I don't know. It just there's a spark there. And then all of a sudden, I get exposed to this program. Everything was ending. Like basically, I said my life's shit now. I was trying to build something here. It's not going to work out. And then boom, I get exposed to this program. I applied at the time because at the time I was still with my partner. So I was like, okay, I can make this work somehow. And I thought, well, what I'm studying in UBC is not at all aligned with me. Like I learned, like once you're paying like $30,000 a year to learn how to use Snapchat, yeah, a lot came to my head of like, okay, is this a good investment? Is this where I want my level of learning and education to go to? And then this program comes along, I apply.
But how did those programs come along? Were you looking for them? Were you Googling? Were you talking to people? How did you bump into these, or how did you get exposure to these programs?
Well, I was always looking for because I wasn't fully satisfied with the program at UBC. So I was looking always, and then financially too. It's like this is a lot to sustain for 4 years as an international student. Like, which I mean, that's another conversation about Canada and its immigration policies for international students and what they make them pay. But whatever. So yeah, I was always looking for programs, and then at the time, my partner was like, "Hey, I looked at this info session thing." it looks interesting. Would you come with me? And I was like, no, that's totally your thing. Like, I don't want, like, that's your thing. We can have dinner afterwards if you want. I think something like that. And then he might have it was something like, well, if you go with me, like I'll get dinner afterwards and like we can eat together. And I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. Let's do it. So we end up going together and I accompany him. And as they were like giving the two people that run the program, they were giving the info session, like my eyes just got bigger and I could just feel it in my body where I was like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. You get to like not only help and provide support for people, but you do it through the arts. And just combining that, it was like, okay, like a breath of fresh air. And I could feel like myself expanding, just taking in everything that they were saying. And then they gave out the information, blah, blah, blah. We walked out of there and then we had the conversation. And my partner at the time was like, oh, I don't think this is for me, because they're already pretty much set on their career. And I kind of explained to them like, oh, it sounds really interesting. And I asked them like, would you be okay if I reach out to them and I apply, because I really liked it. And it was kind of like, oh, I don't, this is, there was a hesitation. I was like, okay, but it was still in the back of my mind. Like, this looks really interesting. And then I
Why
asked
would
them
that be
again.
hesitation? Like, it's a
Um,
program, you know?
yeah, but I learned that, and maybe, I don't know if you want to put this in your, o sea, entre nosotras, or I don't know how you could, puedes agregar esto al audio. I always felt a sense of competition in our relationship. And that's another thing that I learned is I never want to be in competition with my partner. I'm competitive outside of that. And when I mean competitive, like I'm competitive with myself, with what I want to do, with my goals, with things that I want to do in my life. But I never want to go against my partner. It's actually quite the opposite. I want them to succeed. And if I can support and nurture that, and they're out like,
And you were in different career paths. Like, it's understandable. I think it's understandable when it happens in two singers, two painters, two
right.
writers, but you were in two totally different career paths.
Yeah.
So it's weird that he would feel that competition, or that, yeah, that there was that competition between you,
It
or
was
that you felt that.
it was like it was definitely okay, maybe competition is not the right word, but like that creative tension. When you get two creative people living under the same roof, and I don't know, I mean, maybe you can talk more to this because of your relationship as well, and you see that your other partner is doing really well in artistic and creative projects, and you want to go in there, there tends to be a tension. And I definitely felt that where I was like, oh, like I was, when I set my mind to something, I not that I make it happen, it just happens sometimes, but that's because I put, like you said, I'm organized, I put the discipline. I really do put in my heart, my like everything into it. So it happens. And for me, when I see something, I don't get scared or pushed down. It's kind of like, okay, I like that. What do I need to do in order to make that work? That's what I ask myself. And with him, I definitely noticed that tension when you have two creative people, two artistic, creative, let's say creative, coming together. You need a lot of space to roam and explore. And when one starts to succeed or starts to have more accolades in that sense, there could be a sense of like the creative ego coming in of like, oh, well, you're not going to do well. What does that mean? None of that. And I get it. It's happened to me as well, where like when you see somebody succeeding, oh, why? Why does it look so easy for them and not for me? Or you could get into that. But I essentially learned like I don't want to have that with my partner. Never. It's okay if it's happening outside in the world, and I get it. Inside my home, I want there to be support. And if I have a doubt, like if I have a doubt of myself, even when you say like, hey, honey, what do you think? Like, should I do yellow here or green, or like just going off of that, and they can't support that because I'm coming in with a level of vulnerability, asking you, hey, this is something very vulnerable for me. It's a creative thing that I'm still processing, and I'm going to you as a sign of support, and you throw that back as, oh, well, you're never going to do well, or
Well, I think
oh,
it definitely is just the ego of like his own, that person's own insecurities, not feeling enough. You know what I mean? Not
correct,
feeling like they're doing what they want to be doing or not. Yeah, like there's a void there. And if they see you fill that void in your own life, then they feel like a failure and they kind
correct.
of want you to be at their same level. So back to the
Yeah.
career stuff.
So so that tension was there, but something in my heart was still like, no, like I believe in this. I believe in this, and okay. And then I got all my paperwork together. I did that, and then as soon as like I put in my application, it's like everything else fell through. So it was like the beginning of the end. And it slowly started going there. At that point, I hadn't even like thought for a second that I was going to get into this program because I was so preoccupied trying to manage and handle what was happening with my relationship. Obviously, it didn't work out. As you know, I packed up my stuff and I lovingly and thank you dearly lived with you.
That was fun. A
Oh my
couple
gosh.
and a girl living in the living room
And a
for
dog and
3 months,
Cece.
and a dog who just came to say hi, but I didn't want to interrupt the
Oh,
conversation. I
Cece.
wanted to show you. Yeah, por ahí lo llamo. But what I want to say is how interesting it is. I think because didn't you study odontología too
Yeah, dental.
in Mexico? Dental. There you go. So
Yeah.
you didn't mention that. I
You
wanted
don't
to
need to
like,
know that. That's
yeah, but I wanted to comment on that because so many people have a harder and harder time finding their career path and the
yeah,
career that they want. And it's no longer a straight line anymore, which
never.
is one of the things I wanted to talk about here with you because you are a great example of you freaking studied dentistry, I guess, for how long? 6 months, maybe?
It was 2 years.
2 years. Holy shit. Okay, so 2 years. Then
Yeah,
you went into acting.
yeah,
Then you went into media studies,
yeah,
which yeah, you didn't, and you're good at production. You have a lot of good skills. You also did podcasts. You're
yeah.
good with podcasts. That's something you really liked. And then you found therapy and arts. How would you say that? Therapeutic
Expressive arts
arts or
therapy.
expressive arts therapy. I
Mm.
always forget. But and now you're full in depth with that plus psychology and you want to be a therapist. Yes? That's your goal?
Uh, that's what I'm aiming for, like therapy facilitating. I'm currently bringing in, so I'm also doing coaching.
Okay.
So coaching
Cool.
and expressive arts therapy facilitation.
Great.
But
And
yeah,
you're starting that now with
no,
clients
I'm
and
finishing. So I'm actually about to finish, and I'm doing in almost done with that program where I will be doing a test 90-day program, tech,
mhm.
um, about health coaching, and then for me, of course, I would bring in um, my studies for expressive arts.
Okay.
So that would be
Okay.
coming
So
in.
that's that, but see, that's insane. Again, I call it a zigzag, like from dental to acting to media studies, and now that, and you still have, and then podcasting. You still have, like, you have a lot of skills, and that doesn't mean that you have to go into one line. And you can still do acting if you wanted to, or you could still do podcasting goes very well with your coaching practice, I think. um
Yeah,
but that's something I wanted to put out there. Just do what you like and you got to trust that and follow that. Like, even don't think about the money thing.
hmm,
Like for me, I'm doing this podcast for free, but I love it. Like, I want to have these conversations out there. I want to tell people stories, and I'm not worried. I found a way to make money. It's not a lot of money, but, and I keep wanting to stress that for people because I got so frustrated myself in finding that right career path.
yeah,
And you can be so unhappy. And I'm trying
exactly.
to prevent that unhappiness from people, like, listen to this and just if you like playing guitar all day, fucking play guitar, get into a band. Maybe you won't end up being a famous musician, but maybe you'll find something else along the way, just like you did.
Exactly.
You wouldn't have found expressive arts therapy if it weren't for following your heart and going to Canada.
True.
Because you fell in love and you wanted to like start this life together with someone. Imagine that.
Very true.
You would have been in Los Angeles, maybe pissed off and frustrated and unhappy. And in drugs or something. No, I'm joking. Doing drugs.
Yeah, but it's I totally agree with you. If I could go back and talk to my 18-year-old self, because I hate that question when people are like, where do you see yourself in 10 years from now? What do you see yourself doing in 10 years from now? I don't know. I'm 18. I like experience. That's what I would say. If anything, if you could take anything from my resume and my work history, is most of the stuff that I've done and that it has given me, it hasn't given me titles. It's giving me experience.
Exactly.
And because of that, I'm able to right now hone in and say, okay, yes to this, no to that, yes to this. And the more you experience life, the more you're going to be able to hone in and focus to have a clear pathway. But in that, like you said, if you're playing guitar and you enjoy it, who knows what that connection or that channel may open up to other people, other places. Maybe you get to travel, maybe you get to see the world. Maybe you get to find out something about yourself that you like or that you don't like or that you want to change. That's going to take you to even more places than if you just sit down and say, this is what I want to do and this is it.
Or if you freeze because you're confused, you don't know, and you freeze because you're like, why would I play guitar all day? That's not going to make me money. That's like,
right.
What a loser.
Right.
Like so many people block themselves because we've been taught by our parents who came from a different time
exactly
to look for a job that gives you money. So then we see everything else as a waste of time. And then ni chicha ni limonada. So we don't end up doing one thing or the other.
Yeah.
And
se quedó como el perro de las dos tortas. Ni con una, ni con la otra.
Exactly. And you yeah. I remembered like you tell me about your lessons from the acting world, and I found that so interesting. And you were bringing that into Canada already, like what you learned from that, and confidence and how to pitch yourself, how to present yourself. That all you take all that with you.
Yes.
You know, so I think it's a luxury and a privilege of our time that we can do this.
Exactly.
Previous generations could not do this. We can. If I wanted, I'm doing this podcast now. I can do this. Exactly. As long as I, again, find a little job that can keep me going, I can do it. But I chose a life where I'm living in a third world country where electricity leaves. I have no idea when there will be a electricity blackout. I don't know when there will be water. But I'm choosing this because you know what I mean? Like everybody has to find their way. If you need to live at home for a while, then do it, as long as it'll take you somewhere. Like, but follow your interests. That's like the best advice I could ever give someone. It'll all lead you to something.
Yes.
Eventually. Yeah. There's no rush. You're what, 30 years old? 31, 32?
I'm 30. Hey. I just turned 30 in May.
You're 30. Yeah, you're 30 and look, but you have like 10 years of experience doing so many different things. And same as me, I'm 26 and I'm still thinking about going to school. And I still think like I'm too old to go back to school, but I would love to be a coach someday. I would love to help people, and I also want to be a film director, and I also want to write a book. And like, there's so many things I want to do, and it can be overwhelming. And you can think, God, like, who do I think I am that I can do so many things?
Exactly. But then the answer to that is you are exactly you and no one else. Because the more you spend time thinking about X person outside of you saying, oh, look at them, they're doing that, you're just wasting your time giving your energy to somebody. What is it? Where attention goes, energy flows. Where attention goes, energy flows. So if you're putting that into somebody else great, that's good for them, but you're not doing anything. The thing is, just get started. Period. Whatever you're
Just
into,
do it.
just get started, and that will lead you into something else. If it's
Yeah,
perfect, if it's not perfect, if it's not the right, it's never the right time, okay? Like, let's just
that's true.
nip that one in the
That's
bud.
true.
It's never the right time. It will never be. You will never have the certain level of expertise. Just try it. Get started. And
Yeah,
like you said, the money, like, if you're worried about the money, then you're putting that negativity, that fear, you're adding fear into something that could grow and flourish. So if you're adding all
right.
those negative thoughts into something that could flourish, then what, like into those, if you're adding fear and negativity as seeds into a project that could flourish or an interest that can flourish, then think about what you're adding into that project and how you're starting that project rather than coming from a place of genuine interest and passion and saying, I like this. I want to get started in this. Now, obviously, I'm not saying, okay,
It's
get rid of
hard.
your life right now, your responsibilities, and just focus on that. No, you have your responsibilities within your means, within your situation. Say, okay, what would it take for me to get started with this? Can it be maybe waking up 5 minutes earlier and like just strumming my guitar for those 5 minutes? And then going out and doing whatever, whatever life has for you, your responsibilities. But even starting minimal, like people think that they have to do these huge leaps in order to get somewhere. No, I mean, I'm sure if you were to speak to actors and celebrities and who like all of a sudden became famous overnight, they probably did not become famous overnight. They started with little things, but it's that consistency day by day and really saying, okay, what do I need to take away from my, like, what do I need to get rid of in my life to put more of what I want? And like you mentioned, yeah, like maybe sometimes you have to pick up those like jobs that nobody wants to do. And that's something that I learned with acting. Like you really want something, you learn how to hustle because you know that at the end of the day, that job is just a job where you're learning skills, experience, making money in order to fund or invest in those passions that you want. And you
Exactly.
go from there. And the more that abundance mindset comes in, the more you're going to start experiencing people, maybe like I said, traveling, and the more confidence is going to start to come in because you're saying, okay, I was able to do this with X amount of like time, X amount of money, and now I'm here. Wow, can I make that grow? Okay, let's make that bigger. Okay, let's make that bigger. Wow, look how far I'm coming from what I had before. And it's an adventure, it's the journey. But if you're so focused on saying, okay, no, I want to be like how you mentioned, playing the guitar, I want to be a famous guitar player by the time, in like 2 years, you might get there, but will you miss out on all the other experiences and opportunities and people that come along your path because you were so busy looking at that perceived reality? And like you mentioned, yes, I do believe like well, for us, I would say like I do understand that there's people out there who don't have the resources that we have. Why are we like pushing ourselves down if we do have those resources? As minimal as they can seem, we can still make something out of it. So just the way you show up to those things with that dedication, like if you truly believe in something, show up, be dedicated, be passionate about it because you know that you're taking time from your life, your energy, your attention to be there.
Right.
And
Right. I think it's like a decision to believe in yourself every freaking day. Like starting the day
mhm,
with I believe in myself, I love myself, and like reminders because for me I can forget easily. Like things you get used to it. Like I'm getting used to this workflow of the podcast, and I keep reminding myself, Lara, where, and I'll start feeling. You know, when you get bored, you get bored. You're like you get used to it, you get bored, and you stop valuing what you're doing, and like, is there a
mhm,
point to this? Is this does this even matter? will the money ever come? Will I ever get there? And you stop all of a sudden. It's like a reality check that I have to do every morning to like, wait, you have the privilege, you have a home that you don't have to pay rent for. You have everything, you have a job that you paid this microphone with. You have people that are willing to talk to you for the like, value these things and believe in yourself every day. Don't worry about the money will come, or don't worry about your success, that will come. Like, I feel like it's a constant freaking reminder. Like, it at first you can have it, and then it's just like love, you got to work at it.
Exactly.
And it's self-love, really. You got to work at it and decide, just like you decide with your partner. I decide to still believe in this relationship and to still be here.
Correct.
And you decide to keep the sexual desire going. Well, you decide to keep your inner fire going.
Exactly.
In this creative world, because I think this is the most difficult world. I wish I was a lawyer and I loved it and I didn't have to worry about money. I wish I worked that way, because I think it's a lot easier. It has its own problems. It has its own, but still, to be in a field that makes money, like if I was I don't know, a financial person and or a salesperson, and I loved that and I was making a lot of money. God, I on the other hand, those people complain about not having time because they're working so hard and like,
Exactly.
and then they have their own problems. You know, they make a lot of money, but they're not satisfied. And then they have so I don't want to say that this is, oh, we have it tougher than you do, but we do in a way. We're not, you know what I mean? Don't we?
I would say that I think because we have to keep we've made a conscious effort to remind ourselves every day that this is what we've picked and this is what we were choosing, versus what's not that it's easier, because it's not. Being somebody who did work in sales and worked with organizations, I've met some people where it's like their meaning of life has been stripped away. Why? Because, like you said, perhaps they have to provide, and that money is easy to, to subdue or keep people comfortable. But the trade-off with that is what, like you said, time, maybe not being fulfilled at work, or who knows, maybe there are people who are like, I love being an administrative person and this is what I love doing. Great. They've been able to find meaning in their life somehow, but they've been able to consciously say, I choose to do these things. But I think from what it sounds like, what you're getting at is, whereas before our work was what defined us, and that was our level of, this is who I am, it is not. Yeah. Work is one portion of it. Work is, getting that money is, it's like, how do I make this money in order to fund my other interests so I can be a well-rounded person, have those hobbies, be, like you said, I have this job and I know that I have this job because it funds this. And if, for example, if your podcast comes up and makes money one day or starts making money somehow, it's not like you're in it because you're valuing, like that'll be the response because of the quality of work, time, energy, and motivation that you've been giving it. And these other jobs, perhaps you are giving a part of yourself, but if you're coming in with that understanding from the beginning, saying these are jobs where I'm making money to do this, and you're learning stuff there, probably you're learning other skill sets, but you know what your decision is the moment that you either step into that door, to that office, or clock in or log in or whatever it is that you're doing, because you know that job will fund the other stuff that you're interested in and that you're doing, or that passion, that one passion project that you've been able to, to really dedicate time to and create a boring lifestyle with, as you mentioned, like, because it's coming out of love. And once you see that, like, I've seen people who, yes, they are salespeople, or they are in certain organizations that are, maybe corporate, quote unquote, but they truly love what they're doing. And it's not that they just have that, they are very, They put a lot of their love also in their relationships, in the way they spend their life outside of work. So it's seeing those and understanding it doesn't just come from one job to say, okay, this is going to be my easy ticket where I can just have like I can just coast in my life. No, life is hard. I mean, if you want to get like really deep here, dying is easy. You can just die and that's it. And then you're gone. That's it. You don't have to think about it. Like you're dead. Living is much harder. To wake up every day and say, wow, I can breathe. I can breathe, therefore I'm here. I have the choice to actually show up in my life. How am I willing to do that? Those questions and seeing something or having that passion to do something. And it's not about saying, will that bring me money? It's what do I need to do in order to make this come true? And am I willing to spend in the time, the love? It's simultaneous. You're creating a relationship with that, simultaneous with if you're with a person. And like you said, what am I willing to put into this in order to make this happen, to make it sustainable, to where A, I'm enjoying it, I'm actually enjoying the journey, and B, I will see the rewards. And that'll come, as you mentioned, that will come. But it's being able to consciously say, wow, my eyes are open, I'm able to breathe, I'm alive, therefore I'm alive, I can show up. How do I choose to show up in this life? Yeah, I'm sure if some people were to see my resume, they're like, wow, this girl's all over the place. Like, I don't know what's going on, blah, 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 blah. Right away, right? Because it doesn't make sense. Like you said, it's so zigzag and this. But in that, we're realizing that we don't live in that world anymore where one title defines your whole trajectory. To careers, people change careers all the time. It's what did you learn in that experience? What skill sets could you bring from that? Because that makes that, at least from my understanding, that makes a well-rounded person to bring into maybe a team, into a project and say, great, wow, you have that skill set. I don't know that. I know I'm good at this, but I like what you're doing over there. Can we collaborate? Although your skill set might be in...
And that a degree won't necessarily give that for you. A degree is your knowledge. A degree is knowledge, but it's not the skill set.
Exactly.
So you have to combine those two things.
Yes.
Yeah, life is hard, man. That's why I like having these conversations for people to listen to different people and like different perspectives and different life roads, because every person is I got excited. Every person is so different.
Yeah.
And listening to people's life stories always inspired me and like kept me going, because I thought, okay, I'm not alone in this feeling. And anyway, so that's why I wanted to talk to you. Do we want to finish with what was it like living together really quick? Do we have time?
Do you still have the photo?
Yeah, it might be somewhere.
Oh my goodness. I think
it's probably
mine got lost, but you have no idea. That photo, I carried it with me, like in my, because you know me, you know how I am. I have my little agenda. Yes, I still organize my stuff. And I carried that photo as a reminder, because when I did get into those moments, I was like, I don't know if I could do this, and then I would just look at the photo and remember, dude, if in that time, this was considered your lowest point in your life, where at, 8 p.m., I texted you saying, hey, me and, my partner at the time, so-and-so just broke up. I have no one. Can I stay with you and just, for the Vancouver people out there, in a less than 700 square foot apartment, less in Main Street area where it's like
on the couch or on a mattress on the floor.
Mattress on the floor, and my stuff was everywhere. I was living out of my car with like my appliances and my clothes. They were just stuffed in my car, and I remember coming in the middle of the night, and you just were like, yeah, sure, like come in. And I mean, you two made I think you two made that transition very smooth. So I want to thank you for that. And you brought
Oh.
a lot of lightness to what I was going through.
Yeah, no, we enjoyed that a lot. And you also saw us go through some tough times
Yeah.
as well.
But it shows, I think that's where it shows, like, having that support system and that confidence, because I do remember being so sad because I was so focused in just trying to pay my debt and just get out of there and just work and get out of Vancouver, that I didn't
Yeah.
notice how badly I was taking care of myself. Like, I don't think I was really eating breakfast. I don't think I was like, I just went through all of those grief, the stages of grief, right? And you were so sweet,
Yeah.
being like, "Oh, I've made some oatmeal, some chia pudding, and I put it in the fridge for you." And you would make, like, you two went out of your way to really accommodate me in that situation, make me feel like there was warmth, and I felt like I was really supported in a city where I never felt that. And so, thank you, because I don't know what would have
No,
happened.
I think Latins are like that. That's how we are. We don't even think about that kind of thing. Like my mom's the same way. If someone needs a place to stay or needs help, especially when you're going through an emotional time,
Yeah.
and I had the same feeling in Vancouver. I was all by myself too. If it didn't work out with my partner, I was on my own. Like I didn't have a place to go, and apartments are tiny. Like people don't. It's so uncomfortable, like going into someone's space, and I couldn't do it. Well, yeah, I was sort of in a similar situation when I came back from Asia. Like, where do I go? And
Mhm.
terrible. It's such terrible feeling. You feel homeless.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Yeah.
thanks for sharing everything, and it was nice catching up. You probably have to go now.
I do. Speaking about
Yeah,
jobs.
yeah. Go to your job, and
Yeah.
yeah. I'm so happy that we talked and
Me
that we
too.
did this. Such
Oh,
a nice. I hope I'll do a good job editing this.
you will. You will. And it'll be so exciting.
Take
Save me
care.
an arepa.
I will.
This is one of my closest friendships, and I am so grateful to have her in my life. I feel so incredibly lucky to be able to have these type of conversations, but I am especially grateful that I am able to share them with you. It's what I live for. Sincerely, your heart picker.